Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell. You'll get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And when I'm not asking Bruce, hey, how big was Batista's? Well, you know. One of the things I like to do is help people save money. And if you're watching this video right now and you're in a 30-year loan, man, you're overpaying your single biggest bill and you may not even realize it. I want you to do a little experiment for me. Take your calculator out, multiply your monthly house payment by 360 payments. That's how many payments there are in a 30-year loan. That big scary number, that's your total of payments. You're looking at that number? You know you can do better. Keep more of your own money right now and go to savewithconrad.com. Or maybe you've got credit card debt. Man, it's not a matter of if I can save you money with that. Your average interest rate on a credit card is more than 20%. And by the way, all the interest you pay on those credit cards, it's not tax deductible. Whereas the mortgage interest, well, that is tax deductible. So if you owe this debt, it's up to you how to pay it back. Doesn't it make sense to get the cheapest rate possible and the greatest tax deduction possible? Find out how much money you can save right now for free at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. Even scores in the 500s can be approved, and it's no cost out of pocket. But maybe best of all, we're licensed in more than 40 states. We can help more families than ever before. But how much can we save you? Find out right now for free with a quick quote from savewithconrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Grilling JR with the voice of wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross. Jim, how are you, man?
I'm good, Conrad. Are you sure this is Grilling with JR?
I'm pretty sure.
Because, you know, I get confused sometimes on what show I'm on, things like that.
Oh, gosh, listen to you. Yeah, boy, you had an eventful week last week, huh?
Yeah. I got excited for about 20 minutes. Before everybody moved on to something else. So, yeah, I don't know what, I don't know what much more I can say than I said when I addressed it. I made a mistake. It was inadvertent. And I'm very sorry I did it. Obviously it was embarrassing, but then all of a sudden out of that, what was that, about a 1 or 2 second bite?
Yeah.
Here's what comes out of that for some wrestling fans. And I say some wrestling fans because I'm still a devotee of our business.
Yeah.
I have great respect for the fans. They've supported my efforts undeniably for years. And, you know, through Jan's death, through leaving WWE, see, there's that word again, whatever it may be, they've always stood fast. So I think that the criticisms I've received have been from a vast minority of defiant young males and some females who ascertain these points, Conrad. Now, this is really important. I've had a stroke, which, by the way, I've never had a stroke, but that's been diagnosed on the internet from my little faux pas. I've had a stroke. And I've had a bout of Bell's palsy. I've actually had 3 bouts of Bell's palsy. Pardon me, 3 bouts of Bell's palsy. That I am onset dementia. And which wouldn't surprise me, quite frankly. It's going to happen to everybody in some ways or another. But man, I got everything on that thing from people wanting me to die. You know, the thing about that is, here's what's sad about this deal. It's not about my mispronouncing. This is a much bigger issue, in my opinion. And that's all this is, folks, in my opinion. You don't have to listen to it, but I assume you kind of want to, or you wouldn't be here with me and Conrad today.
Accurate.
So it's the flavor of the country right now. You know, before we started recording, you and I chatted about this momentarily, and you had some very good points. It's just where we are. And it's sad. Well, I don't know what you call it. The counter culture, cancel culture. I don't know where the fuck it is. I don't even know.
Gotcha is what I call it. I mean,
yeah.
If anybody deserves, you know, a mulligan, is it not the guy who's done it for decades and decades and decades? So much so that we refer to him and he now owns the trademark to the voice of wrestling, a Hall of Famer, our elder, and most importantly, someone that we all sort of consider a friendly voice.
You know,
I hope so.
Nobody ever runs into good old JR at the barbecue joint or the airport. Okay, maybe not the airport, but JR's like he's your next door neighbor. He's like everybody's uncle. And when he says one word incorrectly, oh, get rid of him. What?
Yeah, yeah.
Like go listen to the alternative, any other show. Go listen to any other show. And by the way, it would have been better if JR was on it. And that's not just my opinion. That's the opinion of a lot of wrestling fans. And I don't know. I just thought it was a little over the top, the cancel culture, the gotcha that came your way.
Yeah, it was a little rugged. The thing about it is that people quote misinformation.
Yeah.
And without any thought, there's no conscience involved. So it's not the fact that I might get this right if I say JR's got onset dementia. But then what if you are wrong? How do you pull that back in? Well, it's out there, so you don't pull it back in. So it was an interesting week. And look, bottom line, guys, I've been doing this a long time. I still work every week to get better at my job. But I can tell you that this was all on me. And, we had a hell of a show. That Guevara MJF match was outstanding. One of the better matches I've called in years and years. But the whole show was strong. But the close of the show, Conrad, those two young kids, both in their mid-20s, knew, because I talked to them, they knew the responsibility of closing this show and how important it was for everybody surrounding them, everybody in the locker room, for our fans to go out there and deliver. Because I had the sense that leading into that last match, Conrad, and I think I'm right on this, and I may be a very, very too biased, speaking of this deal, but I thought that we had a really strong show leading up to that main event.
Yeah.
That whoever's going to close, you better lace them up, because people are expecting greatness. And I think that's what those two guys delivered.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we're going to go to Austin next week. I might get booed there too. Maybe there'll be some signs. I've had negative JR signs in Austin. They don't like to hear Boomer Sooner there. They hear it so much, and they hear so much, Conrad, in the second Saturday in October in the old Cotton Bowl, because we play that when we score, and you know what that means.
They're going to hear it a lot.
Yeah. So I'm going to Austin, great city, as a matter of fact, classy place, and it's sold out. So the good news there is it's sold out, and the good news for me is I ain't got no tickets. So, Conrad, people ask you for tickets to think you just can get something somehow.
They do.
Yeah, me too.
Now, here's the deal, though. We both know a friend if they're available, but if they're not available, kind of is what it is, man. And from what I understand, tickets are going like crazy for you guys right now. Fans are excited. You're back on the road.
Yeah, it is. It's been great. And so thus far, not much of a sample size, but if we look at it on the ticket sales, then it's going to be very successful. Raphael Morphy books these buildings and routes them and all that stuff. Raphael, he stays here at my place here in West Palm. See, they're anywhere I live. I've got early onset dementia, probably angina. I don't know, angina.
You had some of that this past weekend, but that's another story for another day. We're excited that y'all are back on the road. Shout out to Raphael for setting up such good.
He's the man.
Feels like all of a sudden, man, everywhere you go, you guys are hot, and the pandemic is over, and thankfully, better days are here. But that is not the case for our show topic today.
Oh,
this is widely regarded as one of the worst wrestling pay-per-views of all time. But
thank you, Conrad, for building me up and then kicking me right in the balls.
It's not your fault, boy. The news is all over when we're talking about Great American Bash 91. We sort of teased it up and teed it up last week. You ever hear some of my commercials and think to yourself, that sounds too good to be true. That's probably malarkey. Here's the deal, man. It's real.
I did hear over and over the Save with Conrad ads, And then after hearing it over and over, I finally just said, you know what? I'm going to call. I've been spinning my wheels in this 30-year mortgage. I've saved not only a huge amount of money, but I went from a 20-year mortgage on the first one, and then Derek called me again. He called me, not looking for a sale. He called me as a friend and said, Josh, I think this is the time to get into this 15. And boom, we got it done right away. My payments haven't changed. I've been saving money. I'll be age 59 and owning my own home with the kids out of college, and my wife and I's financial stress by owning the house will be melted. That's going to be our home for life. And it's all because of Save with Conrad, because otherwise I'd be 75 years old owning the house. And who knows where I would have been there.
We're routinely helping wrestling fans around the country, just like you, save tens of thousands of dollars. But how much can you save? Find out right now for free at savewithconrad.com. This is the first show without Ric Flair.
Yeah.
Ric Flair has been fired on July 1st by Bill Hurd. He's no longer in WCW.
That'd be Jim Hurd.
Oh yeah, sorry.
But Bill Watts would have not fired him, so you'll know.
You know what's funny is Bill Hurd was the biggest car dealer here in Alabama for years and years, and I just made Bill Watts and Jim Hurd have a baby, and now they're a Chevy dealer. Bill Hurd. Anyway, so the story, and we've beat this up. And by the way, I'm pretty proud of it. A really nice interview with Jim Hurd for the first time in decades over at adfreeshows.com.
It's excellent.
Thank you.
Highly recommend it, Conrad. Highly recommend. And I know the guy probably about as well as anybody from my time working for him that doesn't have some guys still hate the guy. And I find that unhealthy.
Yeah, I agree.
You're shitting me. You hate a guy that you hadn't worked with in 30 decades.
30
yeah.
years.
Yeah. And is that what you got stored in your head? You're carrying that shit around? Okay. Well, to each his own.
I feel the exact same way. I had a great time visiting with him. We got to ask him some questions and sort of hear his side of the story. Can't recommend it enough over at adfreeshows.com, but boy, we've got to talk about the chaos as we head into this. I mean, is this probably peak Jim Hurd chaos? The whole Ric Flair walking out while he's the champ deal?
Well, it's ranked right there. Yeah, it was pretty chaotic. It was a tough place to work in and have fun. About the most fun we had, quite honestly, was doing these live shows. TV days were insufferable getting to that day. But once you got there and you got involved, it wasn't bad. Because all the stupid decisions were made before television. But yeah, it was chaotic. It was chaotic, and you could almost feel things unraveling with no solution based on the hand that was there in sight.
We're fresh off of a Clash of the Champions that was headlined by Ric Flair and Bobby Eaton. We want to talk about Bobby here in a moment, but for now, let's talk about him in the context of 1991. It's the second lowest rated Clash ever at that point. The quote unquote smart fans knew that Bobby Eaton was one of the best in-ring performers around. He had just set the territory on fire 5 or 6 years prior to this with the Midnight Express. And now he's in here with his old pal, Ric Flair, of course, the best friend of Arn Anderson. These are Arn's two very best friends in wrestling at this point, but fans weren't tuned in for it. Was it just, we had sort of typecast Bobby to wrestling fans at home as he's a tag team wrestler, so he can't compete with Flair?
Well, Bobby wasn't hot, Conrad.
Right.
I mean, simple as that. Nobody can ever intelligently debate the skills of Bobby Eaton.
Right.
If you talk to the boys about if they had a big match or they need to go out and deliver a really special performance, I promise you Bobby Eaton would come up in that conversation as their opponent, without question. But he had no momentum. He had no traction. He couldn't cut his promos. There's a lot of things that are working against Bobby in that deal. Here's what you did know for sure. That there was not a lot of magic in the box office, but you knew that when the bell rang, it was going to be solid as hell. It's going to be good. That's what you knew for sure. But people just didn't have an emotional investment in the rivalry or the match, and Bobby had no momentum. Those are all death knells.
It's a weird time for WCW as a whole, but let's circle back to talk about Bobby for a minute, because you and I both got some sad news in the last, I don't know, week or so, 10 days or so. Unfortunately, we lost Bobby Eaton's longtime wife, Donna Eaton, who was the daughter of superstar Bill Dundee. And Bobby and Donna were sort of a rarity in the wrestling business, married for a long time. And unfortunately, she's no longer with us. Did you ever meet Donna Eaton?
I think I did once or twice, Conrad, but it was kind of in passing. Because I remember talking to her about the fun I had with her dad when he was booking for Mid-South.
Right.
I remember that conversation real well, but I didn't meet her often. It just wasn't at the same place, same time, all that, that much. But yeah, in wrestling years, they were married like 450 years, because they're, like you said, wrestling relationships seemingly aren't built for the long haul. And when you hear of one that is, and there are some,
yeah,
that, you kind of admire that, quite frankly.
So we're building to, the whole show here of Great American Bash 91, but I wanted to take just a minute and just, send our thoughts and prayers and shout out to one of the great guys in wrestling. I mean,
great guy.
You never hear anybody say anything negative about Bobby Eaton, and that's for a reason. Bobby never has anything negative to say about anybody else either. So
that's right.
Good dude, hard worker, very talented performer who gave us a lot of entertainment over the years. But obviously he's going through a tough time right now. So let's send some positive powers his way. And he needs all that mojo he can get right now. I'm sure it's got to be a terrible spot to be in.
Yeah. Amen, Conrad. Well said.
So let's talk about the bash. And of course, originally this card, and there's posters out there, and I still have one somewhere because I thought it was really cool because it didn't happen. It features Ric Flair and Lex Luger in a steel cage match for the WCW title. That's what's been promoted. That's what's been promised. And behind the scenes, there's some contract discussions going on. But the poster folks and the people making the pay-per-view promos and commercials and doing the hype there in Baltimore, they don't know that necessarily. They're thinking, hey, we're going to get Flair and Luger for the world title in a steel cage. We'll also promote Sting and Nikita Koloff in a chain match. The Steiners are going to team up with Missy Hyatt to take on Paulie, Barry Windham, and Arn Anderson, also in a cage match. And unbelievably, there's a scaffold match scheduled and also a lumberjack match. Now, this starts to feel a little Southern to me. Once upon a time when you were running the old Southern territories and you're entertaining essentially the same crowd every single week and asking them to come back and see largely the same roster, you've got to get creative. But now it feels like it's an overload. Chain match, cage match, scaffold match, lumberjack match, all on the same card. Who was such a strong proponent of the gimmick matches?
I don't really know, but it was an epic fail. And if I had anything to do with it, and I could have, we got to add some sizzle to a card that's loaded with guys that aren't over. We got to add sizzle to a card for the reason that there are no long-term programs being booked that are blowing off or debuting on this show. It needs help. And so it's like, and wrestlers do this all the time. That's in the wrestling business. If it's good enough, if a little barbecue sauce is good,
yeah,
let's just put a bottle of that shit in there.
Right.
And that's not how it works. So I don't know what one person, Hurd may have had, he may have said he wanted a lot of gimmick matches and add more sizzle because we don't have the steak or whatever, but it was an epic fail. Too many gimmicks, too many gimmick finishes. And I think if you looked at the show as I have, and as I tried to call it, you see that for many of really good talents, by the way, that their heart wasn't in it. They knew they were working an epic fail show. Let's just don't get hurt. And that was kind of how I saw that thing. Maybe I'm wrong, but you guys watch it, you be your own judge.
Let's talk about some other things that are sort of going wrong in WCW on the way here. Scott Steiner's going to tear his bicep. Steiner, context is king, was considered to be one of the next big breakout stars for WCW. A lot of folks even were campaigning for Scott to have a singles run. I believe the rumor and innuendo is Scott didn't want to separate from his brother. They wanted to take care of each other. But Scott now has not only the cool look, but he's also got the hot move. The Frankensteiner is one of the more discussed and exciting moves anywhere in wrestling, not just here in America, but I mean, people are excited about what Scott's doing abroad as well. Anyway, I'm saying all that to say, just like we tried Rick and Bobby Eaton at a Clash of the Champions, we tried Rick and Scott Steiner in January that year at a Clash of the Champions, and Rick did not do himself any favors in the match. Apparently Rick was still in these contract muck and unhappiness with Hurd and refused to let Scott have any of his offense that people were so excited to see. And even Arn Anderson felt like perhaps Rick wrestled a different style in that match. And for that reason, that singles match in January of 91, Scott carried animosity towards Rick even to this day, but for years and years and years. Do you remember there being some back and forth about Scott Steiner and Ric Flair and just how they just were not getting along when you're talking to Jim Hurd?
I'm not sure what the issue would be other than the title.
Right.
There was discussion, but there was ongoing discussion. When you have a pro wrestling champion and the decisions are made within an office or a booker in his office or a committee, whatever it may be, you see that there's always discussion. Who's next? Somebody gets hurt. Watts taught me to manage with the worst case scenario in mind.
Yes.
So if I'm investing money these days, and I am investing money in a new little business, then I'm not going to. I know that the worst thing that can happen is I lose all my investment. That's where I go. Well, how much would that be? I don't know. No, I know. I know exactly to the dollar, the penny, what's going to be. So that's how you manage in wrestling the same way. So Rick never liked to hear who's next. He never, in his own mind, he never felt like it was time for them to change titles and him to be chasing the title or get involved in another program, a personal issue. So I think there's something to be said about that particular aspect. He was very sensitive about the title. The title caused him a lot of grief and helped create a lot of fame. And it was the center of his life, probably, unfortunately, more than it should have been. You want to get down to brass tacks. So I think that Scotty's deal was, he was one of those young guys, not unlike Sting. The one that we're most comfortable hearing or most often hearing about is Barry Windham.
Yeah.
There's a handful of guys that are always talked about. This guy could do it. Maybe Nikita, maybe this, whatever. So I think that's what that issue was, because and there may be more to it than that. Somebody that knows those details, I'm sure, shaking her head right now. I didn't follow the gossip trail around, and there was no Twitter that I can remember or any of that other shit. So nonetheless, I think that's what that was, because Scotty would have been a popular choice within the upper management squad there at WCW and Turner. He's what they perceive the champion should be and look like.
Hurd loved the Steiner brothers. He helped make the Steiners bigger stars than they ever were before.
Yeah. Well, I just think, of course, they're awesome. I caught some of the Steiners Midnight Express stuff you can look up.
Yep.
Phenomenal. And of course, one of my all-time favorite matches, and others have said the same thing. It was the Steiners and Doc and Gordy.
Oh yeah.
God almighty. What a dream booking. I'd have called that match for free. I didn't tell anybody that at the time, but I would have.
Well, let's talk about where we are with sort of the backstage discussion of Ric Flair. You're a part of the booking committee, and Rick had at some point been a part of that committee, and then he wrote a letter of resignation saying that he didn't think it was workable. A lot of other people who were there said, Flair wasn't interested in being a booker. His ears perked up about his own stuff, but the rest of the time he was on his cell phone or making calls or looking at his watch, counting the minutes till he could get out of there. Do you think Rick just wanted to have a hand in his creative, or did he really enjoy the idea of being a part of a booking committee? It just became unworkable because of Herd.
I think he was primarily interested in the title picture.
Yeah.
And that occupied most of his professional thoughts. I'm sure if he had wanted to and was motivated as such, he could have done fine as a booker. But a lot of top guys they invest the most creatively into their own character. And that's because all those years and years where people were not under contract as regarding a salary. So you're always on edge to draw money. And that's why the top guys always had the smart ones, even today. You know, Chris Jericho has a hand in everything he does.
Right.
And thank God for it. I'll tell you another guy we have, Darby Allin, has a great mind. And I said, well, Kaufmann, don't talk about the fucking spots, everybody. Chill. Just chill for a minute. I'm very privileged to have the opportunities to have private conversations with Darby. And we have a very good relationship. And he runs ideas by me all the time. Some of them I agree with, and some of them I don't. But the good thing, he knows he's going to get an honest opinion from me.
That's right.
But he's a good kid, and he's learning early. The more you can have, the more input you can have in your creative, you increase your odds for success. So therefore, going back again, Flair is the champion. He may have, we had those 3 matches in '89 with Steamboat. Well, he liked working with Ricky, and Ricky liked working with Nate. And they were artisans. They were Rembrandts on a different canvas, and amazing. So if you're the head honcho, you say, well, we can get 3 out of this. We get 2 out of this. We could work, we get 6 months or whatever the case may be. So that was, those guys all had a hand in their creative, and a lot of it was for self-survival.
And you think that's where Flair was? Flair was really just looking out for his creative, and everything else was just sort of.
Yeah. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's not a degradation in age.
I agree.
It's just a matter that he took heart in what he did for a living, knowing that the more money, the more tickets was sold, the more money was drawn at the gate, the more money he took home in his envelope. So if more guys had that attitude today, all the business in total would be better off. You think sometimes getting salary heavy and you're paying guys ridiculous salaries with very little incentives built in is not the way to run a wrestling company. There's got to be some motivators. There's got to be something that where there's a goal there, Conrad. So like being a salesman. Yeah. Right? I mean, I guarantee there's not too many people could probably multiply something times 15% or 10% faster, better than you. But that's what makes you go around. That's what makes you Conrad.
Right.
And that's what made Rick. And so he was just, because all the guys in that committee were, I'd like to think, are pretty good friends of his. Yeah. To some degree, anyway. There was no strangers on it. That's for damn sure. So I think he had the right intentions, but all he should have been worrying about was a title.
Did you ever think it was going to get to a spot where he would quit?
No.
Yeah.
I'd heard it 1,000,000 times, for God's sakes.
Yeah. He quit all the time, right?
All the time.
Yeah.
And he was so beloved by the boys because he was a stud. He was the 4-year letterman. He had the most patches on his letter jacket, man. He's the coolest guy in school. So, and he talked like that all the time. Like you said, he had quit theoretically.
Yeah. I've heard other guys say, he would tell us all the time, I quit, I'm out of here, I'm going to call Vince, you won't see me again. And then they would sort of play along, but in their head, they're thinking, all right, see you tomorrow in Richmond.
Yeah. There he'd be.
Yeah.
He he might have a deal where he was going to set out for a couple of days or get the weekend off type deal. But he knew that he was coming back. And I'd heard it. It's the old crying wolf thing, man.
Right.
I heard it so many times. I just thought, well, I've heard this before. He's still here. So I didn't think he'd quit. And I didn't think they'd come to an impasse. Here's the big issue is really this to me. There's no reason that Rick should have been on TV or on the road until his contractual issues had been solved and taken care of, with some conclusion that both sides could at least say, okay, reluctantly, this is where we are. And if that reluctantly, this is where we are, was we can't do business anymore. We're willing to release you. And here's whatever. You don't let it linger. You don't let it in a creative business or a sales oriented business. You can't let problems linger.
Yeah.
Because that becomes a focal point. And it sure as hell did with this case. And it ruined this pay-per-view. He was that over. But because he was that over, and every other booker I ever worked for would have, fought tooth and nail to keep him. That's why I was shocked when he left.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what's going on outside of the company, and then we'll circle back to WCW. It's totally off topic, but it does feature a friend of yours. The UWF is going to run Beach Brawl, and Herb Abrams is going to have the main event with Bam Bam Bigelow taking on Dr. Death, Steve Williams. Obviously, your pals with Dr. Death and familiar with Bam Bam. What'd you think of Herb Abrams and his attempt to do his own thing here? Do you watch this show? Do you remember?
I remember I got more information watching Dark Side of the Ring and their story of the cocaine and the Vaseline and all that stuff. You see it?
Oh yeah.
There's a lot to unpack there, Conrad.
Yes, there is.
I just got to tell you right now. So I didn't think much of it. I mean, it was a big joke.
Yeah.
And the only good out of it, in my view, was the fact that a few guys, Bob Orton Jr. and Doc and Bigelow and others who didn't have work at that time in the States, steady work, got some paydays. But it had no future. It was going nowhere. Based on what I saw of Herb Abrams on that show, you only had to meet, if you're a TV executive or an advertising executive, it would seem to me you don't have to meet with him once.
Yes.
To determine, I ain't doing business with this dude.
Yeah.
So I wasn't a big fan of it. And it had nothing to do with him using the UWF name or all that stuff. It's irrelevant. But the boys got to make some paydays, and that's the only silver lining I can find that whole train wreck.
Around the same time, the George Zahorian trial is going to begin, and we know it's going to play a major factor in all things professional wrestling. Were you keeping a keen eye on this through the news, through the quote unquote dirt sheets, or is this just the talk of the business? What's going on with the WWF's steroid trial here?
Well, it was a topic that a lot of guys enjoyed conversing about, it seemed like. I got my information from the Observer, which seemed to be very accurate. And I got it from New York Post online, because nobody really knew, what's all going on and all that. And we had work to do. Somebody would say, well, do you pay that much attention to WCW during the Monday Night Wars? No, I didn't have time.
Yeah.
How would I have done that?
Yeah.
Well, a guy like me that has early onset dementia.
Oh, gosh. Oh my gosh.
Seriously. Hey, Conrad, if you can't, laughing is better than crying, man.
No, I'm for it. And we know what, now that I know you like it, we'll just start making dementia jokes. We'll have dementia t-shirts. Hey, let's talk about PN News and Dan Spivey here. This is a weird sentence here, but Dan Spivey is cut loose for refusing to put over Tom Zink in a tag match. And then he refused to put over PN News. So they refused to keep paying him. He's out. What do you remember about Spivey walking on the idea of losing the Zink and News? Who cares?
Well, Danny cared. And proud guy, old school. And he was like other guys that believed that losses on TV like that would damage his career, which I disagree with, but you know, it's his career.
Yeah.
We knew there was juice there because later on he became Waylon Mercy.
Yeah.
And Waylon Mercy was powerful character. And in today's world of television, primarily, vignettes and things like that would have been custom made for Waylon Mercy. He'd have been great right now, in my view, because he's huge. He's big heel, the monster heel, which there's a shortage of in this business. Seems like anyway. So I would have, if I had my druthers, Connie, you know what that means?
Yes.
I would have rather kept Danny.
Zink or P and News.
Either one of them.
Yeah.
Or both of them.
Yeah.
You know, we tried to get P and News or as a, you know, hip deal and the hip hop stuff. We try. There's a bunch of white guys trying to figure that shit out. Seriously, if the booking committee had been more diverse,
Well,
really,
no, I'm just saying. No, you're exactly right. I mean, it's Kevin Sullivan. He's not here now, but Jim Cornette, Kevin Sullivan, yourself, Ric Flair, occasionally Tony Schiavone. Yeah, we're missing some. Well, anything besides old white dudes.
That's right.
Yeah,
I totally agree.
Yeah,
and I would have been very happy to step away and have a person of color take my place. But that was, you know, you had a very unique group of very white people, and it was not good for the long haul. But in any event, on this Spivey thing, keep Danny, big, seasoned, that can lead a match. Monster heels don't grow on trees. And Big Dan, the left-hand man, was one of my favorites. Still is. I saw this the other day, a picture of him on Facebook. Yes, JR's on Facebook. That's another sign I'm aging.
Yep. You're on Facebook. You're definitely old.
Oh God. Hey, I got a lot of AARP merchandise I'm wearing around the house now. Kind of cool. But Danny had legs. The idea was real simple. The P and News character was for the quote unquote ethnic audience.
Oh.
And Tom Zink was the prototypical handsome, good physique baby face. And that's what was thought of within like Turner Home Entertainment and all those internal feeder groups for WCW. So Dan was just out in that regard. And you know, sometimes you got to know what he'll to die on, what he'll not to die on. I would have kept him, and I said goodbye to the other two.
Well, somebody else who's going to be saying goodbye is the Nature Boy from the Observer that was dated July 1st. Now, remember, he's going to date these episodes or these issues about 5 days before he publishes them. So the very day this is supposed to be in everyone's mailbox, July 1st, Flair's already gone. But here's the story that Dave wrote. In a story that was still up in the air as we're going to press, the future of Ric Flair and WCW is very much in doubt. According to 4 different sources, on Monday, during contract negotiations between Hurd and Flair's attorney, Dennis Guthrie, Hurd told Guthrie the company was giving Flair 30 days notice, and rumors began that Flair's final day with the company would either be July 14th in Baltimore or July 22nd in Los Angeles. As of Tuesday, Flair hadn't yet gotten notified by the office of his notice. Hurd denied the story and explained that two sides are simply trying to negotiate a contract extension from which all accounts would require Flair to take a huge pay cut from his 1-year contract, estimated at guaranteeing him between $700,000 and $750,000 per year, which wouldn't include additional income from his merchandising revenue. Flair is actually still under contract to WCW through June 1st, 1992. And according to Hurd, Flair has an escape clause in his contract that would allow him to quit, provided he gave 30 days written notice. Hurd said that WCW doesn't have a similar escape clause in the contract, which seems to mean the company can't legally give Flair notice without having to pay off the duration of the contract, although other sources say there are loopholes to the company's benefit. And you wrote in your book, Slobberknocker, My Life in Wrestling, that Hurd wanted changes and wanted younger and new stars. and was developing it for the sake of change itself. And of course, everyone knows Herd wanted to change Rick's persona. He's talked a lot about, he made me cut my hair. He wanted to put me in an earring. And there is the famous talk of he wanted to make me Spartacus. When we talked to Jim Herd about that, he denied it and said that was silly bullshit around a booking table. What if, ha ha ha, cutting up with the guys. And I kind of believe that. I don't think there's a scenario where Jim Herd ever actually wanted. I guess we should add context, because this is the era where Ted Turner is investing in movies. And a lot of people thought, well, that's fucking stupid. Who would pay all this money for these rights to these movies? But then, like The Wizard of Oz, when that played on TV in full color for the first time, people thought, oh, he's a genius. Yeah. He was doing other movies like Gone with the Wind and a lot of others. Anyway, I'm saying all that to say, if he's investing in some of these classic movies, it's understandable that WCW, who also has programming on Turner stations, would be expected to cross promote. I went around the block twice there to explain. We created Oz. Dusty Rhodes pushed Oz out there. Of course, that was Kevin Nash under a goofy gimmick, but still, why would we randomly do that? Well, because Turner has the rights to the movie. So we get that. But even still, that seems like a gimmick or something you do for someone sort of coming up the ranks, not necessarily we're going to change Ric Flair and now call him Spartacus. That's not real. That's just funny. Ha ha.
Well, you're being realistic, and you're being using common sense, which is the wrong elements to use when talking about WCW booking and creative. Okay. In 1991 or virtually any year, before Bischoff got the reins, I remember a series of meetings where Turner Home Entertainment and maybe another division wanted us to help increase the monetization of the Turner library. Look, you got to remember, they started a whole network on Turner Classic Movies.
Yes, it did.
It wasn't a throwaway. It's a big deal. And they thought that one way to help that would be to create some wrestling characters that identified with some of the movies in their big library. And they had the best movies ever made till that point. So I think that's what that was. And Herd, of course, going overboard, wanted to make sure this thing was, hitting on all cylinders, was willing to, create one character and see if it gets over. We don't need this, and this, And some of our themes of our pay-per-views were kind of Fantasy Island type bullshit. Not the show fantasy, but just crazy stuff. So I think that was an edict. See if you can figure out a way to, of course, he's not going to fall on his sword. So we don't have any ideas. Can't say that.
Right.
So I think that's what that was, is just to try to integrate all the Turner properties. And you think about it like that, it's not a bad concept, but you still got to have the right character. Or like you said, it becomes funny, ha-ha, and nobody gives two shits.
I'm going to stir up a hornet's nest here, but I do feel like we should just call a spade a spade. When Bret Hart refused to drop the title to Shawn Michaels at Survivor Series, a lot of people took issue with what Bret was doing and saying, oh, he's not doing business. And Bret was the babyface in that scenario. But a lot of people villainized him. But people said the same thing of Shawn Michaels. And Meltzer, for years, would say, Shawn never drops a belt. He'll lose his smile. He'll have to forfeit. He might never be able to wrestle again. Whatever it takes to not drop a belt in the ring. That was sort of the gist of a lot of the tone of the Observer at the time. And then, of course, there's the whole Jeff Jarrett situation where he's got the Intercontinental title and he's still got one date left on his contract. And Jeff Jarrett was the heel in that circumstance. But it feels like with this whole Ric Flair, Jim Herd thing, Flair is unanimously viewed as the babyface and Herd is the heel. And I think a lot of it comes down to, as you like to say here on the show, the cash and creative. In hindsight, did we get it wrong? Were we too hard on Herd? Or was Flair doing what was best for business? Was Flair being selfish? With the benefit of hindsight, do you view this any differently?
Not much. I think that both parties dropped the ball in not getting it solved.
Yeah.
Getting it solved before it festered as they say in Oklahoma and Alabama. Roll Tide. You know, it was like an open wound, and it kept getting more infected. It never was going to heal at the rate and the route that this thing was taking. So they both got some explaining to do, so to speak. But Herd's problem was he was spouting off things in wrestling vernacular that if you knew anything about the business, you'd been around longer than a week or two, you knew that he didn't know what he's talking about.
Give me an example. Not a specific one. Just make one up in the.
Well, I'll give you the Hunchbacks are a great example.
Okay.
They can never lose. Well, first of all, any gimmick that you have on somebody that makes them unbeatable is not a good gimmick. It's just not.
Ask Goldberg.
It's just not.
Yeah.
So I just think these two cats they're both so hard-headed. They both believed in what they said and hurt himself by saying things like I was going to say that a veteran would talk about instead of coming up with ideas that were laughable. And you got to admit, two wrestlers with hunchbacks like they're in the Young Frankenstein movie, Igor. I got a lot of free time. So, you know, they,
but now at the same time though, I mean, let's add context here. We've also got one of the greatest characters in the history of wrestling is an undead guy who can summon lightning and throw fire. And I mean, I'm just saying, you know, he's going to tag along with a trio of vampires who drink blood. And we've also got a pimp character and a porn star character. I get hunchbacks are silly and they're stupid, but I'm just saying there's been a lot of successful, stupid shit in wrestling. Yeah.
But when you get to the degree that you can't be beat.
Yeah.
Because your shoulders can never be pinned because of your deformity. That to me takes you right off the edge into shit land. And that might be a t-shirt someday. I fell in shit land. And it's distressing to think about, but you're right. There's been a lot of lousy characters. It seems to me like, maybe I'm wrong here, Conrad, but it seems to me like in today's world of pro wrestling, the reality-based stuff is hitting a chord more than the fantasy stuff. Hypnotizing people, zombies. No, I can't do it. I can't do it. See, JR, you're old. It's passed you by. Yeah, that's it. I've lost all reasoning. I don't know what entertains me anymore because I got to go by what you say. And what you say is the shits. Look at the ratings. So bottom line is that everything for the sake or the name of entertainment is a weak ass excuse. We're just trying to entertain the audience. That's such a pussy way of getting out of it. Oh, we're just trying to entertain the audience. Sure. Keep drinking that Kool-Aid, buddy. Save your money. Because it's just not the way to engulf an audience. The audience has got to be able to relate to something in every character that you put on television.
Let's mention Flair and his departure is not without controversy in the locker room either, I'm sure, but nobody really talks about that. But before we do, let's give some context. This is from the Observer. It's the end of an era and the dawning of a new era. Ric Flair was fired by WCW Monday, effective immediately after both sides failed to reach an agreement on a contract extension, which would be from June 1st, 92 through May 31st, 94. The official word was faxed Monday afternoon by Jim Herd to Flair's attorney, Dennis Guthrie in Charlotte, that Flair's contract is being terminated effective August 1st, 1991. Flair was scheduled to drop the belt to Barry Windham on July 1st in Macon in a revised plan decided upon within the last week that had been the subject of many behind the scenes problems. WCW officials weren't expecting Flair to show up on Macon. He was originally scheduled to be on vacation until Wednesday. The revised plan was for Windham to defend the title against Lex Luger in Baltimore, with Barry's title victory airing on TBS either this coming Sunday night or the day before the Baltimore show. It was announced in Macon that Flair had been stripped of the title due to contractual problems and that the two top contenders, Windham and Luger, would wrestle for the held up title on July 14th at the pay-per-view show. This marks the first time in the 43-year history of the NWA/WCW that the world title didn't change hands in the ring. This has got to be, it's the biggest story in wrestling. What's it like inside the office when you're hearing, wait a minute, we're stripping him? Are you thinking that you can have a conversation, or did you know Rick had his heels dug in a big way?
I always believe until somebody throws their hands up, walks away from me, that there's a way to solve an issue.
Yeah.
It's called communication, being reasonable, being fair on both sides. Here's the deal, in a real simply, here's how I would have looked at it as a head of talent. I got to know how much of my budget I have to cut. Total dollar number. You didn't say you got to cut blank out of Ric Flair's contract.
Right.
You're looking to save bottom line costs. And the magic number from the bean counters there in Turner is blank. Well, I can figure out a way to get you your number and never touch Flair's money.
Yeah.
It's called management, strategy. So I'm gonna forsake this veteran, that's basically the face of our brand, and has got more name identity than anybody else on our roster, over mathematics. Now, it became more than mathematics, Conrad. It became personal with those guys.
Yeah, it did.
Hurd dug his heels in, and he was making a statement. I'll show these son of bitches who's in charge. And then there was Flair, who said, I'm Ric Flair. I ain't got to put up this shit.
Yeah.
So I'm just disappointed that the communication didn't happen, and it could have been done very easily. We had nobody in that role. We had nobody in the quote unquote talent relations world at that time in Turner other than Mr. Hurd. He hired and fired. He negotiated. So it was not a good scenario whatsoever. We talked about this before. I said this about the committee, and I believe it to be true. It's a system built for failure, because active performers having the influence over the entire roster and over the entire show is unhealthy. A top guy having influence on his match or being willing to sit down with the younger guy and help him along is a different ballgame. Totally different ballgame. But having a committee of talents who are still actively involved in the game, affecting every match on the card, I find not to be healthy. That's just my opinion.
So there's lots of debate at the time about what exactly is being asked of Rick. I think the original idea was, we're going to have you drop the belt to Luger in Baltimore. And we've talked about Luger a lot recently here on the show. We're probably 3 years too late on that. Maybe that should have happened in 88, but either way, he didn't want to do that. And he doesn't want to do that because he wants to be taken care of. Meaning WCW, depending on who you believe, had asked him to take a pay cut to $350,000 a year, meaning cancel your contract and do it now. And some folks within WCW at the time were saying, no, we were trying to get ready for the next one. He wanted to extend his current deal at the same rate, and we couldn't do that. So we were asking to extend it at half the rate, which obviously Flair doesn't have any interest in. Either way, the gist is Jim Ross was right. It's always about cash and creative, right?
I think so. Pretty much straightforward, simple thinking. But it was just, if you try to get in and people are very protective like they are now in the wrestling business. I know there's a lot of guys from various companies that listen to the show, and we appreciate all you guys, all you ladies. And I wish you only nothing but the best, but every company's got to have somebody that is the talent liaison guy.
Yeah.
And, Tony Khan does it. Christopher Daniels does a lot of talent relations work in that regard and does a very nice job. He's a veteran. He's been around. The boys know who he is, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, Tony's waist deep involved in almost everything. But he loves that. And we're lucky we have him to do that because he's got those young mid 30-year-old ideas. So, and the talents identify with him. They listen to the same music. They do the same. They have the same interests by and large, because of their age, the demographics they both reside in. But in WCW, we have Mr. Hurt, and the guy that needed to have the most product knowledge of anybody on the roster, I believe, has got to be one, the booker, and two, who's taking care of the talent, who's the talent relations person, because you get faced with a zillion issues and questions and concerns, and talent can tell if you're bullshitting them from the first you open your mouth. You got those two roles have got to be solid as a rock, and we didn't have that solid as a rock feel in WCW, as we've gone over ad nauseum.
How much of this was just the locker room? Meaning, I believe at the time, Luger's on a $600,000 a year deal. I think Sting's somewhere in that same neighborhood. And now we're going to who most people regarded as being the real franchise for the NWA and WCW for a long time, Ric Flair, and saying, hey, we need you to take a pay cut by half. And oh, by the way, that means you'll be making roughly half of what Sting and Lex Luger, two guys that you think you made, well, they're going to be making more than you now. I mean, that's probably the gist of Flair's frustration more than anything else. It's one thing to go to him and say, hey, business is down, we need a pay cut. It's another to say, well, you're going to be the third highest paid guy on the roster, and these two guys who are above you, you probably made them. But whatever, we got what we needed out of you, so here's less.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's just bad management. Somebody listening will say, I love old JR and Conrad. They're straight up, but I think they're really wrong on this one, because nobody could be that fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, they could. Again, go to the bottom of your card and find people that aren't in a position right now to contribute to even earn that salary. Those are the ones that you, as professionally as you can, say goodbye to. And they start doing your math. I'm going to take it from those guys before I'm going to take it from my main event guys.
Yes.
And anybody else that anybody disagreeing with that, you've never managed people. You want to take care of your producers,
right,
your stars, wherever it may be. So it was the wrong logic, quite frankly. And you start out with a scenario and a philosophy that if it happens, is it's going to spread shit all over the company. And that's what we did. It was embarrassing.
You wrote in your book, there was a very distinct, stark difference in philosophy and opinion between the two men. Their lack of communication with each other allowed the problem to manifest itself into an unsolvable issue where eventually there was no solution left on the table. Did you know right away? I mean, 'cause obviously he has other opportunities based on his celebrity, but realistically, you had to know, well, if he's leaving here, he's going to work for Vince. It ain't like he's calling up Herb Abrams or going to Japan, right?
Right. Yeah. No, it was obvious where he'd head, and he knew that Vince would use him well. That's all Vince got to say to you. I'll use you good. And guys that understand the business know that means you're going to be working in the main events or somewhere in the top third of the card, where you get a chance to make more money.
Yeah. Your income's going to be there.
Because then they were still getting paid by the houses. And they weren't like these huge guaranteed contracts where guys got their salary and lost their incentives. So they had to still draw money. And if he says he's going to pitch his position, and he did, Vince put Rick in a top position from day one.
Let's go back to call first quarter in 90 when Sting gets hurt before he has a chance to dethrone Ric Flair and become world champion at Great American Bash in 90. It was supposed to happen ahead of time. Sting gets hurt, the patella injury. And Lex Luger is supposed to be the next guy, and Flair flat refuses to drop the belt to Lex, saying we promised it to Sting. Now here it is again. We're asking Rick to drop the belt to Luger, and he's saying, nope, don't think I can. And this has got to be something that not only bothers Lex, but I imagine Barry Windham, because Barry Windham, a lot of people thought going back at this point, 5 years, was one of the best wrestlers in the entire industry, and a former stablemate of Rick's and a running mate and a drinking buddy and a friend. And obviously he used to run the Rhodes with his dad and thought a lot of him.
Yep.
But now both of these guys are in sort of a lame duck spot because Rick's gone. I'm curious, do you remember there being any frustrations that were voiced that you heard from either Windham or Luger about, damn it, we appreciate all that he did for us, but what the fuck? He left, he took the belt?
Nothing specific, because everybody looked at Rick as on a different level than everybody else.
Yeah.
He was just, people didn't openly, some would when he was gone. But out of respect, he didn't get a lot of shit in that regard. There were people, I mean, I've talked to people and I'll tell you here on this show that that's not the way you do business.
Right.
And Nate knows that. But again, it got so personal, and it lingered so long that we're losing options. We're losing the desire to negotiate and solve this issue. I don't know at that point in time, or at a certain point, around this time, I think Rick had given up. I'm leaving. I'm tired of this shit. I'm going to go to WWE, WWF, whatever, and work for Vince. But a lot of people didn't understand. Just drop the belt. What's it going to hurt? It's not going to hurt your next job. It's not going to hurt your next booking. It's personal now. It's not about business. It wasn't the right thing to do for business, Conrad. It wasn't. We just raped and pillaged the damn title, in my view. And here's what's frustrating. And I'm not blaming Rick, because Rick could have done or not have done it. I'm just saying that this whole scenario over this title became, every day when I went to the office, something different. You know, I had an hour conversation with Flair's lawyer today. That Dennis Guthrie guy, you know him? Oh, I don't know. I knew who he was. Know him, no. And it got to be like this one-upsmanship.
Yeah.
He hit me with this zinger, and I hit him this mine back. You know, we're going to get this done. And we'll get it done our way. So, because the ego shit.
Everybody's focused on winning.
No matter the price.
Yes.
No matter the price, buddy.
So let's talk about, just take a time out very briefly and take a sidebar before we jump into the show. How much of this is on Dusty Rhodes? I'm not pointing the finger. I'm just saying Dusty comes back. He finishes up with Vince in January 91, immediately comes back. And for lack of a better phrase, at times he and Rick had a love-hate relationship. Back in the Crockett era, we read about it in both of their books, and we've heard the Crockett's talk about it, that, you know, Dusty had Jimmy's ear, and then Rick would go have dinner with the family, and Jim would try to placate everybody, but it was a process. And now that Dusty's back and he feels like he's in the office and he already doesn't feel like Hurd is an ally, how much of that do you think plays on him?
Some, no doubt.
Mimic it there. Yeah.
No doubt some, Conrad, but it's not the excuse. It's not the reason. Well, Dusty's lingering, you know, mind games adversely affected Rick and blah, blah, blah. You know, people can have their opinion on that if they want. My opinion is it's a cop-out. It's an excuse. When you're down to where it's your lawyer and the head of the company, that's where you are. That's it. So what happened before don't mean shit. Doesn't mean anything. We want to fix this problem. And here's how I propose that we do it. And my solution would have been, I want to leave your contract alone.
Yeah.
I don't want to affect anything. So as far as you can leave this meeting with me today with no loss of income.
Yep.
And, no change in the basic structure of your deal. So, but that's not, it never came close to that. I don't think. Again, got too personal, and you can't let the personal side completely overtake the emotional side of any negotiation, including pro wrestling.
There's a show at the Meadowlands not long after the news gets out, and it's a pretty good house for WCW at the time. 5,800 fans. The gate is just over $87,000. And the fans here start chanting, "We want Flair." In all your years in the wrestling business, is this your biggest PR nightmare you've had to deal with? Your world champion leaving?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. There's probably other things we could mention if we go back and look hard enough, but yeah, pretty much. Cause it was thunderous. It wasn't a faint, grade school kids with their high pitched voices. This was full throated adults. And they wanted everybody to hear what they had to say. And it would have been impossible not to hear it.
Eventually, before we get to the pay-per-view, we should mention, and we talked about this with Mr. Hurd, there's a last-ditch effort to sort of get the match in the ring. I believe the Turner legal department told Mr. Hurd, "Hey, you can't legally fire him. You can't legally do that." So he comes back, tries to schedule a private meeting, offer him $750,000 for a 1-year deal. Flair turns it down. He's made his decision. He's taking his talents to New York City. So we're here. It's the We Want Flair Great American Bash. It's poorly received by the readers of the Wrestling Observer. It got 2 thumbs in the middle, 0 thumbs up, 239 thumbs down. One of the worst reviewed shows in pay-per-view history. 7,000 fans are here to see it, 5,500 of which paid a $99,000 gate. There's 145,000 homes that purchased the pay-per-view. By the way, as a comparison year over year, the Bash the prior year, where Sting won the world title, drew 9,000 fans and $150,000 gate, and it had 200,000 buys. So business is down quite a bit, but a lot of that has to do with Ric Flair, no doubt.
No doubt. Well, he was the star of the show. Everything was built around him. Everything big that happened in the NWA or WCW for the last several years involved Nate.
I want to mention too that this has arguably one of the worst matches ever to kick off a pay-per-view. It's Bobby Eaton, who we all know and have well established here, one of the best in-ring performers of all time. Terry Taylor, criminally underrated in the ring. Maybe you didn't love his character or the stuff you read in the newsletter, but when the bell rang, the guy knew how to perform.
Yeah.
And of course, one of the biggest wrestlers of all time, arguably the biggest star ever, Steve Austin, are all in a match. And you think, well, how in the world is that bad? Well, for starters, we add P and news to it. And then we say, hey, all these guys who can fly around the ring and do all these great things, let's not let them do that at all. Let's put them in a goddamn scaffold match.
Yeah. Insanity. If I was booking that card, the first thing I would omit is a scaffold.
Oh, just get rid of the scaffold and it might actually be decent.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, you're in a you booked a no-win match.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't let's just live off the Midnight Express and Cornette falling from the scaffold and blowing his knees out and things like that. Let's just let it go. That's what you get out of it. You can't have a match.
Yeah.
And I can't remember how many. At one time I knew this, but I think 3 of the 4 were afraid of heights. But nobody asked.
Yeah, it is hysterical to go watch. Here's the write-up. Unannounced in pre-match hype, they had changed the scaffold match rules to allow winning by knocking the foe off the scaffold or by capturing the opponent's flag that was on either side of the scaffold. This was among the worst among the worst matches in the history of pay-per-view television. The highlight of the match was Austin and Lady Blossom walking to the ring with a decked out Taylor without Mrs. York behind him. Nothing like he all dressed up for his prom and his date stood him up. Nothing happened at all. You have to give the guy's guts for going up there. But what does it say for the booker when he takes 2 of the 4 best workers in the company and puts them in a match that guarantees not to make use of their talent and make no sense to boot?
Desperation booking, and not booking with your instincts, but booking on what you're told to do by the front office. We got to have gimmick matches. So you go down the list of all the different gimmick matches. They had the scaffold match on first. They could tear down the goddamn stupid looking staging.
Yeah.
So just had no reason. There's no good reason that match has even existed or was on the show, period. No debate.
-3.5 stars. Bobby captured the flag to win. The announcers didn't even know it was snorted any of the fans. Lady Blossom handed Austin a hairspray container and he sprayed both faces. Then they all climbed down and had a short brawl in the ring. Yeah, man. Bobby Eaton, man, he's so great in the ring. Let's put him where he can't do anything. Yeah. Meltzer would say, while they're taking down the scaffold, Jim Ross and Tony Schiavone opened the show and they mentioned the offer made earlier in the week to Flair, which was also announced to the live crowd before the show went on the air in order to quell what the company knew going in was going to be a ton of "We want Flair" chants. But the announcement actually brought the loudest chant of the night. But as the company hoped, it was off television. Man, this has got to be weird where the fans, they're mad at the company. They're not mad at Rick. They're not pissy with him, but yet they're still here paying their money, showing up. It's a tough spot for everybody.
Yeah. Uncomfortable as hell. I'm sure Tony's got his thoughts on it too. It wasn't a fun show to do. Not because of him and me. I didn't think, we always always had pretty good chemistry, I think.
Yeah.
Still do. And Tony has to endure my bizarreness at times. My sense of humor sometimes isn't for everybody. I get that. I'll watch that going forward. But I'm not going to stop having a good time and trying to entertain the audience.
Don't you watch shit? We want to hear your sense of humor.
So anyway, it wasn't fun to do, man. You can see, we both knew, Tony and I both knew these talents very well. We worked them almost every day. And you can tell when your team is ready to play and when they're not. This team was not ready to play. And they were all caught up in the same cluster that we were. Except, at least they didn't experience it as badly as like Tony and I, because we worked in the office. We were there every day. They could go home, see a TV type deal. So it wasn't a fun night, Conrad. Hard to prepare for what you really know is going to be shit. And that's what we were. We didn't have I can't find good things to talk about on this damn thing. Maybe I'll figure out something between now and the end of the show.
Probably not.
Probably.
The Diamond Stud is going to pin Z-Man in 6 minutes and 59 seconds. DDP is here with his usual routine, but no Diamond Dolls this time. He gets a star in 3/4. Of course, we know Diamond Stud is actually Scott Hall is going to go on to be Razor Ramon and then come back with the NWO, and we're off to the races, but not so much here. But we do have 2 Hall of Famers involved, Scott Hall and DDP. What'd you think watching this one back for the first time in 30 years?
Just a match. Again, when you have no agenda, when you have no rivalry, when you have no story behind it, when you have no momentum, you could get 2 good workers, in Scott Hall's case, a great worker, beating Tom Zink, who was a solid worker, and the match can't be good, can't be great like they want it to be, because they're playing with they don't have the 52 cards in that deck. They're missing some things, and that causes the match to be looked at as time filler, or, well, this is how we're going to start this thing. I'm a big believer. The one thing I'll say about what we do in AEW is that on our TV shows, we start out hot. We try to start out with a real good match. And I think if people can think back on some of our shows, you could agree with that. You start hot and you end hot, like bookends. And so we didn't start off hot.
Next up, we got Ron Simmons and Oz. Ron gets the win in just under 8 minutes. And Meltzer would say Jim Ross said both men could bench press 500 pounds, but in this match, neither could get 1 ounce worth of heat. Really bad match. Simmons won with a flying shoulder block. That's the end of Oz, although now there is word that Kevin Nash will be kept around and giving a new role. It's a dud rating here. So Oz is dead, thankfully. We know that they've tried him as a Master Blaster. Now they've tried him as Oz. He's coming back as Vinny Vegas, and then eventually he's going to hit pay dirt with Vince McMahon and become Diesel, and he's off to the races. But let's just take a minute here. Look at the talent so far. Ron Simmons, Hall of Famer. Kevin Nash, Hall of Famer. Diamond Dallas Page, Hall of Famer. Scott Hall, Hall of Famer. Z-Man, not too bad. Bobby Eaton, Hall of Famer. Terry Taylor, going to be a Hall of Famer. Steve Austin, biggest star in the business. And P and News. I know we're not off to a great start on match quality, but it ain't for a fucking loaded roster, dude. My goodness.
No, we weren't selling goods out of an empty wagon, Conrad. It's just, It comes back to the storytelling. And give me something. Don't just take everything. Everything was cold.
Yes.
Nothing had a buzz about it coming into it.
Nobody.
So the buzz was supposedly going to come from the gimmicks, the scaffolds, the this, the that's, and all those things. But it didn't save it at all. I mean, it wasn't the talent. It was how the talent had been presented leading into that show. And there was so much start and stop booking, change of philosophy, push this guy. We're not going to push him now, blah, blah, blah. So it was just so much uncertainty that nobody had confidence in what we were doing. And I think it showed in their work.
A forgotten match here that if you're an old time fan, you would have really probably enjoyed this, but maybe it was a little too late. Richard Morton is going to pin Robert Gibson in 17 minutes and 1 second. They start brawling on the ramp before the match starts, and Morton then stalls for several minutes. At the 4-minute mark, Morton went after Gibson's bad knee and basically worked on it the rest of the way. Robert sold the knee great. They did 2-minute figure 4 spots. And technically, Meltzer would say this wasn't a bad match, but there was no heat. And because of it, it seemed to drag on. They're both brawling on the ramp again, and each missed a drop kick. Alexander York then distracts the referee as they both got in the ring, and Morton took the opportunity to take the computer and come off the top rope with it for the pin. 1.5 stars. So the Rock and Roll Express, after being one of the hottest tag teams ever in this territory, if you will, just a handful of years prior, are now going to break up. And Ricky Morton, one of the ultimate baby faces, is now a slick back heel with this computerized woman, Alexandra York. I mean, I guess in hindsight, there's always a curiosity when you see longtime partners tag up like this, or take on each other like this. But this to me felt like it was a little late or a little, I don't know. I didn't buy Ricky as a bad guy in this. I don't know.
I thought it was rushed.
Yeah.
Both guys should have had the opportunity to develop as singles. Ricky as a heel with Alexandra York. And look, she was a pleasant addition to what we were doing as well. I thought different face, very sexy woman, it
was a good gimmick for the time too.
Yeah. And it was ahead of its time actually.
Yeah.
In some respects. But we rushed it. So Ricky and Robert had to work uphill, even though they're arguably one of the top 3 or 4 greatest tag teams I ever saw. So it needed more time to develop their individual stories, of which, of course, they didn't get.
Yeah, it's weird because I really enjoy the Alexandra York presentation. I just don't think I wanted the Rock and Roll Express to break up like this. And I just assumed Ricky would have been the baby face, but that's not the way it crumbled. And it just was like, that's sort of the story of WCW 91. Let's keep going. Dustin Rhodes is going to team up with the Young Pistols, who you and I have both admitted we love, Steve Armstrong and Tracy Smothers.
Yep.
They're going to take on the Freebirds and Bradstreet, which is, of course, Brad Armstrong. So we got Armstrongs, we got Freebirds, we got Rhodes, we got Tracy. This is going to be a good match, but even that disappoints a little bit. It's an elimination tag match, and Meltzer says these guys should have had a great match, but it just didn't work. It was really bad early, and it's hard to understand why, given the talent involved. He ultimately gave it a 1.25 stars, but Dustin and the Young Pistols are going to get the win. What'd you think here?
It was unspectacular. I was thought it'd be better because the talents working in this match are all guys that if you had a wrestling territory, you'd embrace having in your territory. But it was just cold and disjointed, and there was no emotional attachment to it. You can't tell me that Dustin and the young Pistols couldn't have a great match with anybody.
Yeah,
and then the anybody was Hayes and Brad. Who else was on it? Jimmy Garvin.
Yeah.
You kidding me? That's what I say earlier, Conrad. Sometimes it's not a matter of effort. Or JR goes on his podcast at Conrad, and he's just knocking all the boys. I'm not knocking any of the boys. I'm knocking the fact that the office, the creative branch of this runaway train, booked him into a corner where how would they have a great match with no story leading into it, no story behind it?
Right.
It's impossible.
Well, it's weird because I think sometimes here in the South, the phrase I've heard or we use is, man, that's snake bit. This show feels snake bit, when even very talented performers who we all know can go for whatever reason. It's like when they get in the ring, it just doesn't click and nobody really knows why.
One of those nights, buddy. It's one of those nights. I was having a bad night then. I was sick. And went straight to the hospital when the show was over.
What was wrong?
I had I passed a fragmented kidney stone.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, that's what's, quite frankly, I think that's kind of what has led to my misspeaking of time every now and then, because I got to have some excuse. I can't just say I've made a human error. So I think that passing that kidney stone on the air was led to my early onset dementia.
I got an idea. Next time you're worried that you're going to say the wrong company or say the wrong thing, make sure you don't by slapping your leg.
Yeah, baby. That's what I'll do.
Just remind yourself.
I'll work up. If it don't work, I'll just slap my face.
Oh gosh. Can you imagine you on TV just next week on WWE Dynamite and then just immediately open? Come on. That'd be hilarious. All right. Next up, Yellow Dog. Yes. Yellow Dog. Brian Pillman under a hood is going to beat Johnny B. Bad by DQ in 6 minutes. And Meltzer would say it was a very long 6 minutes too. Bad does a great ring entrance, but he's nowhere ready in the ring for what they're pushing him for. He did a great sunset flip off the top rope and clearly has potential, but he's years from being ready in the ring. Dog hit a flying body press and had Bad pinned when Teddy Long interfered for the DQ. And after the match, Bad sucker punched Dog to the floor. 3/4 star. Help me understand what's the thinking, and let's put Brian Pillman under a hood with the Yellow Dog. I mean, Flying Brian with the Bengal shit and all, he's over, or it was to me as a kid. Why did we deviate and try the Yellow Dog?
I don't remember what the story was going into that deal. He was on suspension or something storyline oriented. I know the Yellow Dog was a West Texas thing, so I think that was Dusty's deal. And I think somewhere along the way, either him doing it or in a match with somebody doing it, Terry Funk had a run in with the Yellow Dog. So certainly, did we wish Terry Funk happy birthday last week?
We did. We did a whole show on him. It was tremendous.
Oh, okay. That's last week? God almighty. Really? I'm serious, man. Boom. Another week goes by.
Time flies. Fun.
He was 77 or is 77.
That's right.
And The guy emailed my JR's BBQ.com website, and my partner, operations guy, Stephen Link, sent me an email. This guy he said, I'm a good friend of Terry Funk's. He wants to connect with you, but he needs your phone number. No, pal, here's the deal. You need my phone number.
Yeah.
And I said, Terry Funk's had my phone number since the friggin' 80 something or 90 something.
If he has my number, he has yours.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, it's funny how that shit happens. People are trying to weasel in, and misrepresent. But I think the yellow dog was the Dusty idea.
Yeah.
I just don't remember the exact storyline behind it, but there was a reason that he tried to mask his identity as the yellow dog. And here you are you got a guy in a gimmick, and there's a million ways to work the finish, and they can't get a clean finish out of it with a guy that admittedly was not over and ready. Vince hired Mark Merrill because of what he saw as it relates to sizzle. Mark's an athlete and a wonderful guy. He's a lot better guy than he is an athlete. He was a great athlete. But that just goes, that's all I'm saying. It's not Mark Merrill I'm talking about. Is we can't find a finish. We can't do a finish, Conrad. Are you kidding me? So at that point, here we go. So Bischoff got a good draw.
Yeah. He goes to interview Missy Hyatt in her locker room, and Meltzer would say Bischoff looked like he was auditioning for the WWF with his 1960s used car salesman insincere overreacting. Of course, Missy was in the shower when Bischoff came in, and Missy screamed and threw her shampoo at him. Well, it's funny to see one of the first write-ups of Eric Bischoff here in the Observer. Not very favorable.
No, he had a good way of, here's the deal. Eric was a natural heel.
Yeah.
And, sometimes it could be said you're too good looking for your own good. I've never had that said about me. I know you probably have on many occasions, but nonetheless, Eric's a little like Paul Heyman. And I say this in highest regard. They're both very good at what they do, and they're easy to dislike.
Well, the next match is Big Josh, and he's going to pin Black Blood in 5 minutes and 39 seconds. Big Josh, we know, is going to be Matt Bourne, or he is Matt Bourne. He's going to be Doink. But Black Blood, a lot of our listeners may not know who that was. Catch everybody up.
I don't have any idea.
Oh, yes, you do. We talked about him a couple of months ago.
I forgot. Just to be honest.
Oh, no, I'm with it. Here's the thing. He's under a silly hood. You'll have to look him up. You may not recognize him at first, but it's the old Billy Jack Haynes, and he's dressed in quite a goofy outfit here. He's got the crazy mask on. He's got the mullet out the back, but Billy Jack here is Black Blood.
He wasn't around long enough to commit him to memory.
No. Meltzer would say nobody cared about either of these two, but their work in the ring was solid and stiff. Finish saw Blood about to hit Josh with the axe when Dustin Rhodes grabbed the axe handle and hit Blood in the knee, and then Josh inside cradled him. Star in 3/4. But I do want to talk about Dustin because Meltzer clearly takes issue with everything Dusty touches, including Dustin. That made 4 people that Dustin had single-handedly beaten on this show. I got to tell you, as a kid watching at the time, I didn't think that Dustin was overpushed, but when I did get to sit down with Mr. Hurd, he couldn't help but talk about it and Dusty had to be pulled back. He was trying to push that kid of his to the moon, and he's a great kid, but Dusty hurt him by pushing him so hard. What say you?
I can see that. He could have brought him along a little easier, a little slower, more deliberately, where it meant more. Certainly the kid was at the kid then. He's 50 now, for God's sakes. And he's better than 98% of the people I see working on TV every week is Dustin. There's the same thing could be said for Cowboy's son, Eric. He should have been in a territory, hidden somewhere, working in developmental of some sort. And instead he's on one of the longest running television shows in the genre's history on the Saturday Night TBS Wrestling. Too much too soon. But that's what you are. Promoters do that. Look at all the promoters that push their sons. And some of them worked out well and some of them didn't. You know, Jeff and Jerry, it worked out okay because Jeff's a good hand. And he got on TV when he was more ready than a lot of these cats. But there's a bunch of them, like the Von Erichs kind of worked out okay, aside from the personal tragedies. But this was not good. And I don't think Dustin was ever totally happy anyway there in that era. I think he had his best days as Goldust. He owned that character. He made it his. He couldn't make, everything else was in his dad's image.
Yeah.
And he was a defiant young male that thought he knew what he was supposed to do. So I saw more creative happiness in Dustin when he was a Goldust and refining and getting that Goldust character together than at any other time. By the way, he's also training kids.
Yes, he is.
Or outside of Austin. He's got a school down there, and it's from what I'm told, it's done really well.
It is.
And so that's all good stuff.
RhodesWrestlingAcademy.com is where you can find out more about it.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of great young talent coming up there. I know he's really motivated, active, engaged. If he's excited about it, it's going to work. So this is going to work. So check it out. RhodesWrestlingAcademy.com. Great friend of the show.
I'm sure that we will see some of those young men and women in Austin.
Yes, I'm sure.
Hope they got a ticket. If they don't have a ticket, they should call Conrad.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
He can do it.
Let's talk about your man here.
Yeah.
Listen, some of these ideas on paper make a lot of sense. People want to see scaffolds. People want to see cage matches. People want to see giants. So let's put Elegante in there with the one-man gang. Yes. 6 minutes and 9 seconds. Spencer would write. Elegante came down to the ring with 4 midget wrestlers who ran around biting Gang in the butt and harassing Kevin Sullivan. This was really bad. Although Gang did take a slam off the top rope, which is pretty impressive considering his size. Elegante got the claw on Sullivan, who gave Gang powder. Before he could throw the powder, Elegante kicked his hand and the powder went in Gang's face, and Elegante clothesline Gang from behind for the pin. -half a star. Yeah. One-man gang, Elegante, and little people. WCW 91 is a weird time.
Yeah, well, first of all, Elegante wasn't ready for TV either.
Correct.
It's that insatiable urge to be different for the sake of being different. It's the influence from other Turner entities. I've mentioned Turner Home Entertainment. Everybody that read the Observer, and I often wonder how many people in those departments didn't read the Observer or the Torch. And by reading those, they became educated.
Yeah.
They got their degrees. So, yeah, he should not have been on television. If so, only on videotape and only on pre-recorded, edited pieces of business. Protect him at all costs. And, the idea was once we saw how, George's aptitude for pro wrestling was, you're getting ready for one match, Conrad. And he comes in, he's done all these things, and he has one match, and let him roll on, go back, bouncing that basketball again. I told you the story of the fact that he goes back home and he's broke because people bled him to death when he's working. And that good old Harvey Whippleman was contributing to Elegante's bills. And a lot of people never knew that. You think Harvey's a manager or he's a kind of a utility guy, and George is making 6 figures plus, and he had no money. Poor old Harvey comes in to bail his ass out. So he's the kind of human being he is. Good man. So I can see why Rock always took to Harvey. Harvey's a good person, but this match should never have happened. You got one man gang, Conrad, unless he's going to go to go to WWE right now. The wrong guy went over. First of all, Elegante should not have been booked.
Right.
Athletic big men that know how to work heel and cut a promo. As I said earlier, repeating it, they don't grow on trees. But unless you have a decision maker that totally understands that, you're not going to cultivate and nurture this investment. And I've always thought that one man gang is one of the best super heavyweights ever. And we treat him like he's just another big guy with a mohawk.
Well, next up, we got Nikita Koloff and Sting in a chain match. They're going to go 11.5 minutes. Meltzer would say some good pops for low blows. Both guys touched the first three corners and brawled for a while, then sprinted to hit the fourth corner with Nikita hitting it first. Sting gave Nikita a low blow with the chain after the match was over at 2.25 stars. So Nikita wins. You rarely see that, but I like it. I like the booking, and I even like Sting showing the hardened edge afterwards, doing a low blow on Nikita. So these are the first sort of real stars on the whole show. We're like, I don't know, more than 2 hours in to this card so far, but the crowd reacts to them big, and they're really with this match. You know, Nikita in 91, a lot of people would say is not the same Nikita from 5 years prior, but still pretty good match, pretty fun match here.
Yeah. Nikita had downsized. He wasn't as massive.
Yeah.
But still he had that obvious charisma, and he still had it. This wasn't as much of it than there was prior to that. He would look more like Hawk or Animal or some of those big dudes. And they all went to the same high school, I think. Or they went to rival schools. They're all right there in Minneapolis, Robbinsdale, I thought. So, yeah, that match, I think people were just waiting on something.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's what they got. And it was good. You know, it was a solid match. I'm not big on these touching all four corner things. It doesn't capture me as much as it maybe should. But I think it waters it down a little bit. So, but I don't know what else you would do. But nonetheless, it's again, you book yourself into a match that has limited finishes. And that's what we had here with this deal. But those guys did good. God almighty, that they didn't have the table set for them very stringently. But anyway, it's for the crowd and the atmosphere and the ambiance of the room, they did a hell of a job.
So let's get to the world title match. Before we do, I guess we should remind everybody, Flair has the big gold belt. Flair had to put up a deposit when he won the world title, which was $25,000. He never got that deposit back. So he kept the belt. And as the famous story goes, to prove to Vince that no, this time is different. I'm really coming this time. I'm not going to say I'm coming and then not come, because I think Flair had done that at least 2 other times. Flair overnights Vince McMahon the big gold belt. So they know for sure he's really coming now. But now that we have to sort of let the show go on here in WCW, we'd no longer have a world title. So they order a new one from Reggie Parks. Most people refer to it as the Ron Simmons belt or the Vader belt. That's the one that is synonymous with this era of WCW, but it's not yet finished because by God, he just left 2 weeks ago. They haven't made it yet. So what do they do instead? They take an old Florida Championship Wrestling territory belt that Dusty had, and they sort of gimmick it up with another plate on top that says World Champion, and they try to shoot around it and not show it. And different photo ops and stuff, they would even not show the belt, but you could sort of see that there was one there. They would use a tag belt. I mean, we don't think about that very often, but this has never happened before. We've never needed a backup belt. What do you mean we don't have the belt, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, again, another embarrassment. Not paying attention to the details.
The main event is weird, to say the least. As a reminder, it was promoted as Ric Flair versus Lex Luger in a cage match. Now it's Lex Luger versus Barry Windham in a cage match. Now, normally when you have a cage match, it's because There's been a lot of interference. This is now going to be the blow off. It's going to be the big crowning moment. We're finished with this. We're going to settle some scores. But these guys don't hate each other. They're just both the number one contenders. But we promised a cage match, so we still have to deliver it. So we do. But you know that Barry Windham's not winning the goddamn thing when he comes to the ring and they spell his name Windam on the graphic. There's no H in Windham. Either way, tough situation. The crowd is all over you guys chanting, "We want Flair." And unfortunately, Luger and Windham still have to go have a match, and it's not the best. Meltzer would say Windham worked as a babyface and Luger as a heel, but nobody picked up on it. Windham did some hot stuff, especially when one considers his size, lots of near falls and good moves. The finish saw Harley Race and Mr. Hughes come to the ring. Windham was distracted by Hughes and Race told Luger to do it. Luger gave Windham a pile driver and pinned him. And after the match, Luger left with Race and Hughes. Although nobody knew it, Luger did turn heel. I think Windham turned face, but even I'm not sure about that. 3 stars. They tried their best to make the best of a bad situation. We're putting Mr. Hughes and Harley Race. We're trying to smarten up everybody that, hey, those are bad guys and you know it. So don't cheer for Lex, but I don't know, man. In hindsight, if Rick really was leaving, was there another opportunity or is it going to be damned no matter what if Rick's not there?
Oh, I think you're going to be damned no matter what if Rick's not there.
Yeah.
Especially the way it was handled. Yeah, it was so awkward, so unnecessary. Comes back strictly, and I know it may sound old school, but guess what? That's me. Common sense doesn't have an age.
Yeah.
Common sense doesn't have a demo. And the little details were overlooked. Everybody worked covering their ass. It was just horrible. And like I said, I was suffering that whole show. So my memory of this show is foggy, to say the least. I was reluctant to take any pain medicine, but boy, I loaded up on it when I got to the hospital. They saw I was in bad shape. And I missed my only TV I ever missed over illness or something was the next day. I couldn't work.
Right.
You know, and a lot of guys listening have had kidney stones know what I'm getting at. It's miserable. So, I didn't give a shit about the this is the first time I can recall doing a pay-per-view that I truly wanted the son of a bitch to get over with. I was in so much pain. I was hurting. The show sucked. We could hear it. Nobody would tell us that this is not what they wanted to see. We get it.
Right.
But you just got to do your best. And it's hard you got to just go find that passion somewhere and recreate it to the best of your ability. So it doesn't sound like you're shilling too bad and do your work. That's kind of the only option we had.
This is not nearly the big crowning moment that a lot of people wanted it to be for Lex Luger or Barry Windham. This has got to be, I think you used to say on the air, oh, this is like kissing your sister. That's got to be what this is, right? I mean, you always dream of, hopefully, being world champion one day. Then you finally get the opportunity. It's just a fucking mess.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good way of putting it. It was just sad that the company had degenerated to that. And if you had astute people above Mr. Hurd that actually gave a shit about pro wrestling, then these issues would have been, as I suggested earlier, you saw the biggest problem you got now. And if you got to reduce cost, find it somewhere else, not in Ric Flair. It's my take on that deal. Pay him what he needs, keep him happy, and let him do his magic about helping get somebody else over. Look, Rick was doing a great job of getting Sting over until Sting got hurt. But a lot of things happened out of many of our control, but it still was very disheartening to see the company, the infrastructure be so tentative and to have bullshit finishes and cold booking and all for no reason. Just no reason whatsoever. But for those that watched it, God bless you. Because it was hard for Tony not to watch, I can promise you.
We're not done, by the way. We've still got the main event. I'm kidding. That was the main event, but it's not last. It's Missy Hyatt teaming with Rick Steiner to take on Arn Anderson and Paulie in a cage match. Now, this is not the original plan. Here's what was written up. What happened here is that the Maryland State Athletic Commission has a rule prohibiting man versus woman confrontations. Somebody made a huge mistake if that's the case. If the commission wasn't going to allow it, it had no business being advertised as such. If the company knew, well, we already knew this is a dishonest company. If the company didn't know, then the commission is at fault, considering the match had been advertised on TV for weeks. Murdoch and Dick Slater kidnapped Missy, who now has black hair, before the match and carried her away. Poor Missy still had to take a bump because a fan went after Murdoch and he dropped Missy on her head so she could take a pop of the fan. Let my family save your family some cash. You don't need perfect credit. You don't need money out of your pocket, but we will save you money. It's not a matter if, it's a matter of how much. SaveWithConrad.com.
Oh, Lord.
In the ring, Rick laid Arn Anderson out with a clothesline, then pinned Paulie after a clothesline in 2 minutes and 8 seconds. It's a dud. And that is the last memory that you have from watching this pay-per-view. We were promised Missy in a cage. We don't get it. Instead, we get a clothesline, and that's it for Arn Anderson. Perhaps the worst ending to a pay-per-view ever. Is this near the top of the list, or is this number one, the worst pay-per-view you've ever been a part of?
I'd have to say this is the worst pay-per-view I've been a part of. It was just, a lot of us, and I'm certainly not the only one. A lot of us, Conrad, are working our ass off.
Yes.
Working in everywhere you turn, there's another controversy. Everywhere you turn, I had to talk to Flair today or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And it's like a dog chasing its tail. Nothing was ever settled. So I feel badly about folks that had to watch it and actually pay their money for it. I think we have to have that attitude about our audience. We can't shortchange them or bullshit them, especially with so much social media information flow. It's even more important to do everything as right as you possibly can every time out. And again, I'm sure here's the most ludicrous part of this. There are probably people in WCW thought that was a good show because they got their way. They got to do some of their own booking. Hey, let's have a scaffold match. Let's have this. Then did Dusty book this show?
You got to think so.
Well, then what he's trying to do is get back in everybody's good graces as well. Same thing you would do or me, I would do. If the head company, the home office is saying, we want this, then your first booking back as the head honcho, you kind of want to try to do what they want to do, whether it's right or wrong. It seems like, but that would have been my philosophy. But I think along the way, you got to disagree, not be afraid to disagree. Don't confront them, just converse with them and let them see that we can't do this. And here's why, but here's the better idea. Perhaps listen to this one. You make them a part of it, let them contribute a little here and there. But it was tough. I don't remember a show that I did that I liked worse. I mean, my little element aside, one thing, what it was, poor me. But just the lead up to it, all the starts and stops. You think about it, you're top guy in your whole territory. He's in, he's out, he's in, he's out, he's gone. No, he's not. He may not be gone. We may do this. When you go offer him $750,000 and he didn't work 1,000 dates. I say facetiously, but you really screwed things up because I guarantee McMahon didn't offer him any guarantee. How's that?
Yeah.
One of the guys that came in, we're going to use you well. You can get paid well.
They're calling right now to see if you can get them another payday.
Yeah.
Hey, let's jump in. Let's do a few questions, then we'll wrap this one up. We're getting ready for next week. By the way, next week we're doing a watch along from where Vince brings back, this is an interesting concept, by the way. July 15th, 2002, the unthinkable happens. Eric Bischoff debuts and Vince kills the NWO. It's an interesting little time capsule from 19 years ago. We're going to go back and take another look at next week. Job Soul Bro wanted to know, why in God's name did the horrific tag match go on last? It wasn't a good match or a good payoff. It was awful. The thinking there is you've promoted a cage, so you've just got to have a minute to put the cage up. And if you spend all that hype showing the cage match or setting it up, and then it starts with that, you really kill your main event, right? You just put it on lame duck last.
Yeah. And well, they thought, Missy being in it would be a different deal, different twist. The idea there is to send them home happy.
Yes.
And you got that by beating both Heyman and Arn. So that was the theory. So there's no logical explanation for it, but it just followed suit with this whole ill-advised pay-per-view. And so it doesn't make sense, but it's what the decision makers felt like needed to be done. I was not a fan of this decision, but if it worked out great, then cool, but it didn't. And it wasn't going to. They had very little confidence in Lex and Barry, apparently, with Harley and Mr. Hughes involved. It just was a fait accompli to go with Missy and Rick Steiner and all that stuff. And we knew the rules. They had very stringent rules in Maryland. The blood, the intergender stuff. I don't know how it is nowadays with that, but nonetheless, in that era, it was a no-no.
Public Lenemy #1 says, if Flair didn't leave and it was Flair Luger, would Luger have still gone heel with Harley as his manager while beating Flair for the title?
Well, that's hard to say, but it could have happened. It would have made it more effective if Rick and Lex had a quasi rough babyface match, and then Harley and Mr. Hughes and Luger formed this unholy alliance to screw Nate out of the title. Then Lex would have really been a good heel. He would have been a legit heel. But screwing Flair out of the title would have been the key there. But, I don't know if I could have an answer to that public Linda Menemy.
Dan Potts wants to know, once Flair left, would a one-night tournament have worked better to crown a new champion?
It might have. At least there would have been a story behind it. There would have been a bill behind it. And when we got to the match to determine the new champion, there would have been a story established leading into it, which you would hope would create a little bit of momentum. So there's a good chance that could have been the answer to that would have been yes.
Last one, then we'll wrap this one up. Gene Jackson wants to know, had Harley Race shown up at either Bash 88, Starrcade 88, Wrestle War 90, or Capital Combat 90 and yelled at Luger, now's the time, and he won the world title sooner, would it have changed people's perspective on on Lex moving forward?
Absolutely. Of course it would have. Flair passing the torch to Luger should have made Luger a made man.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
I do.
But that's what we talked about when we did those Lex Luger shows. Which, by the way, got great response from our audience, which we appreciate. But he got booked, started, stopped, and backed off, and restarted and reset so many times that it wasn't going to work. It was we stumbled, fell, fall, just muffed, whatever. It was horrible. And but again, it goes back to communication and management and bringing the talents in and setting them in a room and discussing this program and everything instead of doing everything on the phone or through a lawyer. Jesus, got to give me a break. You bring the two guys going to work into the office and you sit down, you have a meeting, you carve out an agenda. Okay, here's what we'd like to do. But we want to exchange ideas. You tell us what you like, what you don't like, and why. And let us see if we can fix everything. It's all creative. The stuff we write is fiction. So we can create fiction in any form that we choose. But we need your help to do it correctly. That was never done.
Well, here's something that's not fiction. JRsBBQ.com is your hookup. We got you covered for almost everything you're looking for. We got the mustard, We got the ketchup. We got 2 types of sauce and a lot of other collectibles too. Right, Jim?
Yeah, absolutely. And did a lot of book business there. You know, I signed, I personalized Under the Black Hat. And that's been a real popular seller. And I'm sure again for the holidays it will be once again, but for any birthday, you know, any special occasion, thank yous, things like that. It's pretty cool because we have a place there where you order at jrsbbq.com where you can tell me what you would like for me to write in a book. So that's kind of a cool deal. I was told this week that but before July ends, we'll have all the seasoning back in stock.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. I cooked some burgers just for lunch today, and with that seasoning. It's really good. So, but of course I'm biased. Of course, I'm going to say it's good. So it's all good, man. It's jrsbbq.com. We got all kinds of specials, you know, flash sales, this, that, and the other. So neat stuff. We're selling a lot of those little customized, really cool. Have you seen those Moscow Mule mugs, the JR mugs?
Hell yeah, I have.
That's pretty neat work, man. That's clean and it's good. It's a classy piece of business. So we appreciate everybody's help, you know, support. We're not a big operation, so it's got to be a team effort between us, like my friends like you and others that can help me and are willing to help me, which I love. And the audience that's listening today, you know, give us a shot. Order something. If you don't like it, I'll promise you, you won't regret it. We'll take care of you. I always have, always will. It's a fucking bottle of sauce. Really. If you get it and you don't like it, email us back. We'll figure out something. I promise you.
Check it out, jrsbbq.com. And don't forget to program your DVR. You're going to catch Jim Ross every week calling AEW Dynamite and back on the road and making towns near you. Be sure to check out tickets at aewtix.com. I'm sure that Raphael Morphy and Mr. Khan and of course, Mr. Ross, Mr. Schiavone, they'd love to see you there. Yeah, wrestling is back, man. And it's on the road and it's in front of live crowds. And we're going to be back next week talking and watching WWE's Monday Night Raw from July 15th, 2002. Eric Bischoff is a part of the World Wrestling Federation. Hell has frozen over. We'll pick it up the following week. We're going to talk about the Invasion pay-per-view and what could have been in July 2001. And then we'll finish out the month of July talking about Triple H in 95 and 96. And we even had a fun idea, since this is the 25-year anniversary of Hulk Hogan turning heel. As a little bonus for adfreeshows.com, we're going to have JR watch that match where Hogan turned heel. And that could be kind of fun to have him watch an old Tony Schiavone call.
Sure.
And see him turn bad guy. It's all happening right now over at adfreeshows.com. You get all these shows early and ad free. And we got some big things planned coming up later this summer for adfreeshows.com. I can't recommend it enough. How about you, Jim?
I love it, man. Like I told you before, if this has been around when I was a kid, my dad has been whipping my ass every day because I promise you I would not get all my chores done. It's just amazing. So I love the Ad Free Network, and you got such a great team. It's, you know, you get a lot of credit, and rightfully so. You thought of all this shit, but boy, you got a good team around you that contribute mightily. And I have great respect for everybody I've worked with in the Ad Free Shows group. And I also want to say this to the fans. Those of you that expressed yourself after my faux pas on the show the other night, it really means a lot to me that many of you still have confidence that I can get my job done. You have to understand, when you get to be my age, it's not a secret that I've called more years than I got left. I get it. I'm not a fool, but it's important for some of us to keep feeling that we have a value and that we can still contribute to the thing that we love the most. So for those of you that support that, I thank you. And as you get older, or you talk to your parents or grandparents, wherever it may be, you'll understand what I'm saying. Yeah. Is that you really will, Conrad. So I thank everybody for it. And you were right there on the spot. You know, I know I'm going to get a good text from Conrad, and he right Johnny on the spot. So that's when you can tell you got a true friend. And I found out I got lots of true friends over this little setback.
And we're going to be watching every single week. You are the voice of wrestling, and we can't wait to hear from you this Thursday and every Thursday right here on Grillin' JR with the voice of wrestling, Mr. Jim Ross.
Heavy on that Mr. baby. And thanks for watching, everybody. Supporting what we do. We love you. Appreciate you. See you next week.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.